We're talking with Patricia DeJoseph, who is an international psychic and speaker, life coach, author of several books, had her own radio show on for quite a while, also done television appearances, has helped the police and criminal investigations, find lost people, that kind of thing, and we're talking to her today about psychic ability in general. Nice to see you here, Patricia.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to ask you a really basic question. What is a psychic?
Well, actually, each and every one of us have psychic ability. We call it intuition, a gut feeling, or sixth sense. And basically, it is our sixth sense. We have the 5 physical senses, and this is our spiritual muscle or sense that God has given us. It's that inner voice, that connection with God. And a lot of people misunderstand that. They, think of it as something that only certain people have, and sometimes they have a misconception of the good that it can be used for. In the Bible, it talks about fortune telling and admonishes that. That's the misuse of a gift we all have.
Okay.
It's when we use it in a way where we want to take advantage of others, and we use that gift to expunge financial or other rewards. But in its truest sense, it is a gift that God has given each of us to be in tune with His guidance and to make the best choices that we can make.
Mm-hmm.
So I see my job, I kind of describe it as like a travel agent. We can leave from somewhere and know the destination where we want to go and do it on our own. But if we go to a travel agent, we find so many more interesting places
That you wouldn't have otherwise.
that we wouldn't have, right? So it enhances and embellishes and gives us guidance to do more than we perceive for ourselves.
Now, everyone has a certain amount of psychic, or pretty much everyone, a certain amount of psychic ability, but most of us don't use it or develop it, or maybe even aren't aware of it.
Right. As I said before, we all have it. Unfortunately, a lot of us, as we grow up, we're not given the understanding to realize what it's all about, the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we get older, we become more, I guess I would say, physically tuned to where we think we've got to work through problems with logic and reason only. Those are wonderful things. I mean, God gave us our mind to think and make choices on a physical level. But this takes us beyond and gives us the ability to see beyond our own limitations, because God's plan is always far greater than our own. If we recognize that by utilizing our own intuition, we do more clarify His messages.
How old were you when you realized that you had an extra gift, that you were really gifted with a strong psychic sense?
Well, growing up, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I went all through Catholic school. So I had no knowledge or understanding of what this was all about. So this is my point that I brought up before. I actually thought it was something taboo, and but I did, growing up, feel a lot of times like I was a fish out of water, like I wasn't exactly fitting in the groove where some of my friends were, and that kind of thing, and it was actually in some ways more of a negative.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got into my 20s, a friend of our family's wanted to go to the psychic, and we ended, because of her, deciding just to, it was just like a curiosity thing.
Right.
And I never realized that one single moment when she first started reading for me, and I'm referring to the psychic we went to, that would be such a life-changing.
So how did you feel? What was that feeling at that moment for you?
It actually was very difficult for her, because what happened was I really connected with her energy, and I drew it in to open my own psychic ability more, because everything essentially is energy and motion.
Right, right.
And psychic ability is tuning into that energy. And of course, I didn't understand that at the time, but it became a very emotional experience. I started crying. I didn't understand why I was crying. She wasn't telling me anything,
Bad.
sad to
Right.
cry about. But it was just such an overwhelming experience that it brought about the tears. And at the same time, she told me, she said, you are so incredibly talented in this direction. You just don't know your talent and ability. And you are actually going to become known, recognized worldwide, and you're going to write books. And I totally
that was
thought all that
ridiculous,
was
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I really didn't believe any of that, but all I knew was it just totally changed me in that instant. That energy I felt, it was like a key unlocking a door. And from there on, I was like a kid in a candy store.
So how soon after that did you just kind of practice on your friends at that point? How soon did it become a career, or a part-time career for you?
Within 2 weeks, I was
Wow.
doing readings. It started with being so excited about the experience and sharing it with some friends. And one of those friends had a brother that had worked on the railroad, and he had actually been hit by a train. They didn't know how he lived through it. He lost both his legs and he lost some of his fingers. And she immediately wanted to go to the psychic when she heard my experience. And so, and asked me to go with her. And as we were driving there, all of a sudden my legs became really numb, and the fingers that he had lost, the same reaction. And I didn't feel that it was to alarm me in any reason. I felt like it was a good thing, like she was going to get a message from him.
Okay, but now this you already knew at this point. You were both already aware that he had lost his legs when this happened.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
this was just a connection.
But it was
with
just
him.
telling me who was connecting with her.
Okay.
She hadn't heard from him, and she was concerned about him.
Mhm.
And I said, you're going to hear from him. When she got home, there was a letter on her kitchen table
Yeah.
that she had received, and I thought, I did
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I was really, really overwhelmed by the fact that, that I picked up that way, and that it happened to me physically to
Right.
know it was
Right.
about him. And so then I did start really, we had a jewelry store at the time, so I literally would use my customers as guinea pigs without them knowing it. I would just try to see what I'd pick up on them, like if they were married, they had children, that kind of thing. And then engage in a conversation to get feedback that
Right,
I was
see if you were-
correct. And within a few weeks of doing that, I also went back again to the psychic that had started this whole thing. And in doing that, we had another amazing experience.
Intense connection.
It turned out one of the maids at the hotel where we had our store, the very moment that the psychic's name was Marianne, and the very moment that Marianne and I were in a session with each other, all of a sudden I felt this tremendous sadness and gloom and darkness. I can't even put words into it. Well, as it turned out, we both were startled by it and paid attention to the time that this happened. At that very moment, one of the maids that was really loved by everyone at the hotel committed suicide.
Wow.
And that's what we were picking up on.
Wow.
So that kind of startled me and made me a little bit afraid to keep going. But at the same time, my curiosity, and from the time I was a little girl, I always felt I wanted to be of service. I wanted to somehow help others. And more I started really understanding that this really was doing that. That it was an amazing way of reaching others and being able to help them help themselves, to bring about happiness and more success, and to more listen to their own intuition.
Is it ever a burden? Do you ever feel it as a burden?
Oh, definitely. Especially in these last couple of years, because with the economy and some of the tragedies that have happened, I have had people with horrendous losses in either loss of life, with a loved one, or losing their properties. I had that turned off. Anyway, I had one client in particular that was one of my first here. I had her for over 20 years, and she lost $2 million plus homes within a short time of each other, and it was very painful for me because of her.
I wanted to ask you, that leads me to another question. Do you ever edit, when you're doing a reading for someone and you see something really negative, or death or illness or that kind of thing, do you ever edit it a little bit if you feel they can't handle it, or?
Definitely.
No?
First of all, I had a very early experience in my career with my own personal situation about death, where someone predicted that I would lose all my loved ones within a period of 3 years. And I took that as meaning within 3 years of us talking. And that didn't happen until 20-some years later. And yes, I did lose.
But it was still all one 3-year period.
Right. And when I realized that it created so much pain for me, and no psychic is God. We can't be 100% accurate because we are human, and we use our human interpretation of what we see. So that can somehow be off.
Right.
So I would say if a psychic is 85-90% accurate, that is a very high ratio. Yeah. But that still leaves 10-15%. So I will not predict death, even if someone asked me. But I will. I've had cases where someone was facing terminal cancer, and I have gone through trying to help them through the process by letting them know some problems that I saw coming up, that they needed to follow their doctor's orders and to go for tests, because, some people, including me, the last thing they really want to do is have to follow what a doctor says and go through all that, and we all kind of think, oh, well, we can do it tomorrow, or we don't need to do it. And so I would really work to help them, and of course help their loved ones deal with what is happening to this particular person.
Briefly, can you describe the process of a reading that you do for someone? What's
Certainly.
the process?
I don't use tools. There are many psychics that will use cards or palm reading and things like that, astrology. And all of those are very valid. I don't put them down in any way. I think they're very useful. Matter of fact, I was attracted towards astrology, but one of my coworkers said, with what you do, I think that would distract from your gift.
Right.
So I simply tap into a person's energy, and I start a first reading with a client of telling them things in general that I see, so that they understand, and relate to that I really am tuned in, and that this is coming from a psychic level. And then I ask my clients to just simply direct me to the areas that they are most concerned about, so that we can obviously cover what's most important first.
Right.
And I've dealt with just about every aspect of life you can think of, literally. Some have been light and airy and happy, people going on a trip or looking forward to bonding with a relationship and that kind of thing. But I've also worked with helping to find lost people, lost animals, pets. I've worked at times with murder cases, although my family really was not happy with that, so I didn't keep pursuing that direction. Because I work on such a positive level, I work from the heart, I really try to use my gift to,
For positive
yes, exactly.
outcomes, yeah. Patricia DeJoseph, thank you so much. Great to see
Oh,
you.
it has been absolutely a pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
I probably should have cleared with you before.